Hello all you out there in YouTube land, this is Translator10 and I'm back with another action figure review. For those of you who know, the year is 2012 and it's the 25th anniversary of one of the most interesting, controversial movie franchises in basically history of science fiction. And I'm talking about Robocop. Robocop is, of course, a gunned-down police officer who was placed in a very hazardous situation by the megalomaniac corporation known as OCP, Omni Consumer Products. Because in the near future, consumerism has taken hold of pretty much all of America, if not the world. And since they pretty much own everything, that including local law enforcement, they can do whatever they please. One of their projects is to demolish Detroit and bring about the new Delta City. But in order to do that, they need to clean up the streets a little bit more because, after all, if they're going to demolish a city full of crime and then just rebuild on top of it, there's going to be some vermin about. So, with 6 months looming, they really needed to do something about it. One form of research and development was on the Ed 209 series. You know, that funny little robotic thing that has a little whiny fit like a baby. And, of course, there's the Robocop program. Well, all they had to do was wait for a volunteer, and unlucky for Alex J. Murphy, he became the volunteer. After being gunned down by drug runners, he is reborn as Robocop. Robocop was a wonderful film. Not only is it possibly one of the defining films of the era, it encompasses Reaganomics, shoot-'em-up action, a wonderful sci-fi picture that actually deals with the human psyche. Because after all, Robocop is a machine, but he's rediscovering his humanity along the way, and he is embracing it. It's just a wonderful, wonderful film. Sure, it's dated. They're driving around Ford Tauruses. The TV screens are, of course, of analog tubes, and they're not flat screens. Computers are very blocky, but it was 1987, and they were working on a kind of a strict budget. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. I watch it all the time, and this coming July or August is the 25th anniversary. Well, somewhere along the line, Kenner Toys actually thought of a way to bring Robocop to the younger crowd, because obviously kids loved Robocop. It was an R-rated picture, but tell me when you weren't between the ages of 5 and 10, you didn't see Robocop, if not in its full, uncut, R-rated form on your parents' Super VHS or in its cut, edited for content version on television. Or you could have seen it on HBO Cinemax, one of those little movie channels. So Kenner knew this and decided to market Robocop for children. What was the result? 1988's Robocop and the Ultra Police. Now they actually did team up with Marvel Comics for this little promotion, and they actually did create a cartoon series to support this toy line. Before I get into that, that is just a wonderful piece of card art. I love the blank, emotionless stare of Robocop as he's blasting away an unknown thug. It looks so much like Peter Weller, too. It's just awesome, especially the logo. You can't tell me that's not Peter Weller. Alright. The cartoon was mixed up with their, I think it was like a Marvel Superheroes Action Hour, where you would have episodes of Spider-Man and that X-Men pilot, Pride of the X-Men, along with Robocop stories. It only lasted about a season, and the toy line didn't last as long either. In fact, the toy line wasn't really that much innovative except for one little gimmick. Each figure actually came with caps, which I'm actually missing, and you can plug them into the figure's back. And now that you're staring at a blank wall for quite some time, how about we get on with it? So here we are, Robocop and the Ultra Police. The Ultra Police leader, as he's called, Robocop. Now, as you can tell, everyone knows that this is not how Robocop looked in the film. That is true. Most of these gray silver pieces would actually be black. There's a lot of detail that is actually simplified, and that's just because they're telling an animated cartoon, and you can't be so overtly detailed in a cartoon. It would be nearly impossible to animate. But for what it is, I've never seen much of the cartoon. I saw little bits and pieces of it when it would be rerun. Back in the day, I was actually really surprised they actually reran the cartoon, and I've seen some on YouTube, and it's quite entertaining, I guess. I just never really got into after the first episode. But I did have this figure as a child growing up. I don't know how I got it. It was probably a hand-me-down from my cousin or what, and everyone I knew seemed to have had this figure. They didn't know what Robocop and the Ultra Police was, but they knew who Robocop was, and that was all that was important. Robocop is it's got a nice sculpt that really is not much of it's a tribute to the actual animation model itself. Well, not a tribute, I mean, it's pretty faithful to the animation model except for this backpack. And it also works as a loving tribute to the film itself. Now, I can't really tell you why the action figure market failed for these figures, because they were only produced for like 2 series. You had Series 1, which had Robocop, Wheels, Ace Jackson, Birdman, and then you had the Vandals, Nitro, and Headhunter, I think his name was. And you had a couple of vehicles, Robo 1, the Robo Cycle, and the Skull Hog. And one thing about those interesting, if I would just show it to you for 1 second, these vehicles would actually be retooled just 2 years later for Batman's The Dark Knight line. The Robo Cycle would actually be switched over with a more Bat-themed element for the Bat Cycle, and the Skull Hog would actually be converted into the Joker Cycle. Just take off this launching dash area here and put in a big smiley Joker face. So like I said, this figure is very nice. It's very dated, but it does have a very, very nice, sleek design. And unlike most figures of the time, he does have some really cool, well, not really cool articulation, but he articulates at the hips, the shoulders, and the head. So he only has 5 points, but it's 1988. This is pretty much all you're going to get. He does have 2 accessories, because after all, what would Robocop be without his helmet, complete with the red visor, and a really sleek design for his automated pistol. You know, like that little Beretta thing he carried in the movie. This, of course, looks nothing like that. It's got a triangular barrel, and it's just blocky as hell. But he also did come with 2 rolls of caps, which I am missing at the point. But even if I did have them, I think they would be a little old, and I don't know if they would actually work. So I may just get a thing of red caps from like my local supermarket and then just try it out later. I also like the details in the color that they chose. For the legs, they decided to go for a black. And of course, the backpack's black. His stomach's black, like normal, what you would normally see in a Robocop figure. There are some details missing, like the little vent exhaust thingy-majiggy here is gone. His biceps, which were a bit pushed out a little bit more or less molded in. he has these little rings that were not present, but of course his gloves were actually, his arms, his forearms, his hands were actually black. So there is a lot of black missing, but I think that's more or less because when dealing with an animated cartoon, you can't have a lot of black, because if you were shooting against a black background, you wouldn't be able to see the actual character model. So they just did this for the sake of making a better animated cartoon, and probably a cheaper animated cartoon as well. He actually, what's really interesting about this figure as well, he does have these little grooves inside of his hand. That way to better hold his gun better. Because his hands are not molded going straight forward, but they're at an angle. So if you were to just put the gun in like you would normally do, he wouldn't even be able to hold it. So, just stick it in the groove like so, and now he can hold it straight, or semi-straight. One little interesting thing is, just like in the movies and the television show, I guess, he does have a peg in his gun that can actually attach to his thigh. Just like so. However, it's on the wrong side. Now, it may have been on the left side in the cartoon, I'm not aware, but I remember it on the right side, so it's either a goof or just something that is just unique to the animation. They wanted him left-handed, which is okay by me because I am left-handed. And the helmet goes on pretty smooth as well. Now, because helmeted figures they didn't have the ability to do the alternate heads, you know, moving one head to put on the other head. So when you put the helmet on Robocop, it looks like he's just wearing a bowl on his head. It just sticks out way too much on these sides here. But it is still very unique. You can definitely tell that that is in fact Robocop. Till you go around to the sides. Oh my freaking god, looks like he's got a bird beak. Oh well, it still is a very nice figure in my opinion. You can also open up his backpack, because this is how you would load the caps. Now what you would do is you would stick the roll of caps in between here, and they would come out through the side. Then you would close the backpack and just flip the dial. And that clicking sound you hear would fire the caps. The clicking sound that you hear, there's this little hammer here. The hammer would actually press the cap up against here as it's pulling the cap up, and that friction would set off the cap. I know. But what I also love is the backpack is actually pretty detailed in itself. That's actually pretty cool. It was an interesting concept. I don't really think that cap-firing figures existed in this form. Now, like I said, the figures themselves were never really popular, and the series only lasted for 2 years, or 1.5 years, from 88 to 89. Though I do have some Kenner booklets from 1990 that have Kenner and the Ultra Police. So it is quite possible that they planned to do a 1990 toy line. They just canceled it before it ever saw shelves. One of them would be a very interesting, I think it was a talking Robocop figure. It was definitely like a large size action figure, similar to the Ultimate Batman for Batman Returns and Batman the Animated Series. And it actually did have a place where his thigh would open up on the right side, and you could stick his gun in and out. That was pretty cool. Would have been the first time ever that you would have had a Robocop that did that. It's unreleased, and you could actually see prototype images of this on eBay. The seller's asking for $1,000. Good luck getting that. But like I said, this toy line wasn't that successful, possibly because it's 1988 and the Transformers are still semi-popular. G.I. Joe still got a brand new cartoon, I think. I know it was the late 80s, early 90s when that G.I. Joe Deke series cartoon came out. And Ninja Turtles just came in with a bang. So if Robocop was popular with kids, it was probably just for that 1 year and maybe just this one series figure. They didn't really care for any of the others. Even if we did get an Ann Lewis figure along the line, it would be the only Ann Lewis figure we would ever get. But as a kid, it was a fun figure to have. He fit in very nicely with your Ninja Turtles, your Batman figures, and your, as I got older, Power Rangers and whatever the heck I was collecting at the time. It is a very, very nice figure. If you can find it for a decent price, I would suggest you go ahead. You won't be disappointed. It is a piece of action figure history. And it was one of the ways that Kenner could market an R-rated movie property for kids. And also, they did a really good job with his face sculpt. What I really love is they actually gave him eyebrows. You can see they gave him eyebrows. But of course, Robocop doesn't have eyebrows, so they have to paint them in. Now, this isn't the only time. This may be the first time, but it's not the only time that Robocop would actually see figure form. After Kenner gave lost the Robocop license, or just simply sold it, I don't know exactly how movie licenses work, we did get another toy company producing Robocop figures. However, the results are mixed. Some figures were ultimately bad, like the Talking Robocop series figures from Robocop 3, and others just have mixed results with the Robocop figure from 1994. Is it as you can see from the sculpt, it looks like it could be a very decent figure, but is it really a decent figure? Well, find out in part 2. This is Trans810 signing off.